Benny the Butcher. Let's talk about Benny the Butcher.
You want to start with what he said about criticisms, or you want to start with his new record?
Yeah, because that's the shit that's pissing me off this week too. People with this criticism thing. Let's let's talk about the music, and then we can talk about the critique thing. Because I think J. Cole said something similar too recently.
He sure did. Benny the Butcher did a song with Lil Wayne. It's called Big Dog, and they both showed up and did great things. You know, I'm very hard on Lil Wayne.
Yes.
He showed up and he did his thing. I thought he did a great job. I was excited that he did a great job. I'm excited to see him with somebody like Benny the Butcher. And what I was most excited about was Benny the Butcher did not have his, I don't want to say same, but he did not have his default flow. Yeah. Griselda is known for rapping on boom bap beats and having default deliveries. Yeah. Each person kind of has their default flow. And we all do as MCs, Jay-Z included. We've heard him do a ton of flows since we were just talking about Jay-Z. Nas. I mean, every artist has a flow that you like, oh, this is their usual. This is their favorite. I think it's always nice when we hear them doing other things. Yes. This is the first time and let me just put an asterisk, I am not a huge Benny the Butcher fan, so maybe he has switched flows many times before. Okay. Every time I have heard Benny the Butcher, it's been a very specific cadence and flow, and he has changed that for this record. And so I thought it was really nice. It was a surprise to me to hear him completely different, in a different pocket, in a different flow. I said, oh, this is good, because he's lyrical, and there's no doubt about that. Right. But it's kind of hard to, going back to mainstream appeal, right? It's hard to garnish mainstream appeal when you're always putting out the same thing. There are a lot of artists who do that and have struggled to reach that mainstream appeal. Whether they want to or not is a different conversation. Right. But it's hard to be in the top category, in the Billboard #1 categories. All of these all of these big lists, all of these big accolades, right? The accolades, it's hard to get them when you kind of stay in one lane, right? Yeah, and so, like, Rick Ross has a default flow. We don't always hear Rick Ross in those conversations, right? Right. Jadakiss for a long time had that same thing. We don't always hear Jadakiss in those conversations. Someone kind of in the middle of those two people is Wale. Wale is definitely slept on, but Wale gives us a lot of the same cadence, delivery, flow. And Wale. About to say, and I like all of the artists I just brought up. Yeah. But these are some of the reasons why they have that struggle. Right. Because, and I know I say this a lot, but I think it's true. Balance is key in music. Yeah. And if you're not balanced, look at what we just said about Meg. We love that the record is balanced. Cobra is a very balanced record. We love that. Well, it's hard to listen to somebody's full album when you're just getting jab, 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 jab. It's like, that's all you got? All you can do is jab. You ain't got no right hook. Right. You ain't got no uppercut. You got nothing crazy in the tuck. Nothing. And so...
No roundhouse kick?
I don't know if that's allowed in boxing, but yeah, right. No round. I was going to say that. It's kind of funny. I was like, should I say something crazy? But yeah, if you go to see a boxing match and the whole time the person's just like, all right, I'm ready, and jab. All right, jab. After 3 rounds of jab, you like, all right, man, you got something else back there? Right. Yeah. You ain't got nothing else in those shorts? Right. Nothing else? Trainer ain't teach you nothing else? And so, long way of saying, I was surprised in a good way to see Benny the Butcher come out with a completely different flow, slightly different cadence. This is super rap breakdown stuff. Sorry. But yeah, that's what I thought. It's a great record. And I know we're going to get to this next. Right. But I think this is one of the reasons why critiques should exist. Because maybe some of the people listening and watching to this podcast, hey, y'all. Hi. Hey. What's up? Maybe some of the people...
What's up? What's happening?
I was wondering if he was about the T.I. I was like, oh, is she about the T.I.? Perhaps some of the people listening to and watching this podcast don't listen to Benny the Butcher, but perhaps they do listen to Lil Wayne or just appreciate our musical taste and critiques. And so now maybe they will go listen to Benny the Butcher. No, we're not a #1 podcast yet. And we're not going to have 1 million people go listen to Benny the Butcher yet. But if 5 more people go listen to the Benny the Butcher record, it's helpful to Benny the Butcher.
Right.
Which we'll get to that in a minute. But this is why I think critiques are important. And I appreciated the record. I appreciate I appreciate what Lil Wayne did, which made me laugh because the record's called Big Dog. Most of the verse, he has dog references and says dog in Lil Wayne's verse. And so that was cool too.
Okay. I gotta listen to it. I did not hear it.
Oh, man.
I did not hear it. So
we can't have a real conversation.
We can't have a real conversation. But let's have a real conversation about the critique thing. Because I can speak on, I don't need to hear it to speak on that.
So Benny the Butcher, he was in an interview and, you know, everyone knows what's been happening with Drake's criticism of Drake being criticized for all the dogs. There are multiple critiques that have gotten, I don't know if viral, but lots of views. Drake also has been responding to the criticisms.
Well, I was just about to say, Drake is responsible for any critiques of him that went viral.
Right. And so he's been responding. And so Benny was asked, what do you think about this? What do you think about people going on public platforms? Can't get my L's out today. Too many wins, no L's. Just kidding.
Okay.
What do you think about people going on public platforms and critiquing artists? Benny says it's art. And art is done for multiple reasons. I'm paraphrasing. But none of the reasons are for people to critique it. That people should not be critiquing music. People should not be critiquing art. They should consume it, enjoy it. And basically, he didn't use this term I'm about to say, but basically we should all shut the fuck up.
Benny doesn't get out much, huh?
I think Benny does get out, but I think Benny is one of the people who have had harsh criticisms. And J. Cole says the opposite. Lil Yachty had J. Cole on his podcast, which, I'll be honest, I did not know existed. But
I didn't either.
Apparently Lil Yachty has really been putting out podcast episodes, like straight up putting out full-length podcast episodes consistently. And he had J. Cole on recently, and J. Cole said he thinks the opposite. He thinks critiques are important. He basically said there's an ecosystem and both sides help each other. The music helps feed the critiques help feed the music for reasons like what I just said. People will say, hey, I heard on a podcast, people are loving Dash new record. But I don't even know who Dash is. I'm going to go listen to Dash new record. Somebody who I mentioned earlier, who we're both fans of, Joe Budden. One of the things that has made his podcast huge for artists is their sleeper segment. And they have helped artists who people never heard of garnish a lot of popularity because they're saying, hey, here's a record you might have never heard before. We're going to talk about it. We're going to play it. You should go check it out. And that has been very helpful because Joe Budden podcast is one of the #1 podcasts.
Yeah.
And so people doing stuff like that is helpful. Whether it's a sleeper segment, or an album review, or just a, yo, y'all heard this record? This shit is trash. Let me tell you why. Or the opposite. Yo, y'all heard this record? This shit is fire. Let me tell y'all why. I agree that.
Oh, no. I just had a thought.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say that's how music was disseminated before there was like the internet. It was in magazines. What it was, but not just magazines. It was, you go to the record store and you hear something playing, or you hear something on the radio and you're like, hey, did you hear this? Or, come to my house at 4:00 because they're going to play this track that I heard last night. They're going to play it again and it's really good. Or somebody's excuse me, somebody's driving in their car and it comes on the radio, music was not disseminated the way it is now, where everyone has the music at their fingertips. And a lot of the artists that we know, like the Jay-Z's, excuse me, Nas, a lot of the earlier artists, Run DMC, Slick Rick, all of the earlier ones, right? Like the music got out to people because of word of mouth in some way, shape, or form. Maybe it was the radio, but it was still word of mouth because you still had to catch it. You still had to hear it.
Right.
And then you would share it with friends or whoever. That doesn't happen without people having positive or negative opinions of the music.
Yeah.
It just doesn't. I don't understand, and I didn't mean to, I know you were trying to make a point, but I don't understand, and it's not just happening with music, and we don't have to get into anything else, but it's not just happening with music. We are in a culture right now where if you have a negative opinion, you are being policed for your negative opinion. There's a difference between being honest about something and saying, I don't like this and this is why, versus saying, this is trash, this is shit, this is, you know what I mean? Like you could say some really terrible things, you could say some really mean things, or you could just say, hey, I didn't like it and this is why. The instrumentation on this I didn't think it sounded right, or I didn't like the melody here, or lyrically, I just feel like this wasn't this person's strongest. I'm used to them doing something different. I don't like the sound of this. This is dance music, and I don't usually listen to dance music, so this is not really my cup of tea. It is okay to say things like that. It is okay to do that, and art is absolutely meant to be critiqued. It is absolutely meant to be critiqued, and that is why it is distributed to so many people. That's why it's so widely distributed, this is why artists don't just make art and then keep it in a studio. They have art shows, they put it in galleries. We go to museums to see art. We go to museums to see sculptures and paintings, and it doesn't make sense to me why people think just because you don't like something that somebody said about you that made you feel bad about yourself. And it's okay to feel that way. It's okay to have bad feelings about the negative things people said about you. That's human nature. But I don't understand this idea that people can't have an opinion.
Right.
That's just, I'm not talking about when Funk Flex used to get on and be like, yo, this is whack. I'm not talking about that.
Right.
I mean, because when you're talking about, and we had a long time ago, we sat in the closet and we had the gatekeepers conversation. And yes, there have been times where certain people who were considered gatekeepers have done things like that.
Yeah.
And that hurts. That hurts the music. That hurts the flow. That hurts the distribution of the music. Not today, but it did.
Right.
So that is why those people were considered gatekeepers. You don't even have that as an issue now.
No.
That is not even an issue. So it's so frustrating to hear. I get it. Like I'm very sensitive. The intro to my podcast is Erykah Badu saying, I keep in mind that I'm an artist and I'm sensitive about my shit. I understand putting something out into the world and being afraid that the world won't like it. I feel like I'm the epitome of that. I'm always a little nervous when the podcast comes out, or I'm always a little, but I can't, if you're going to put it out there, if you're going to make it public, it's going to be subject to criticism and people's opinions, whether you want it to be that way or not. And music is one of the top things that is out there for other people's consumption. If you didn't want other people to consume your music and digest it in whatever way they interpret it, then you shouldn't have put it out to the public.
Yeah. You hit it on the head. Music is one of many forms of art, right? And as you said, it is something that is on the top level, probably because hip-hop culture is so popular. Mm-hmm. And also because, as you said, it's readily available in our phones the moment it's released now. Where before we had to do all the things you said, go to the record store, wait for Flex to play it on the radio, whatever, right? But I think he's looking at it the wrong way. I think it is something that is helpful to the artist. As Cole said, it is part of the ecosystem today. Today, where there are not really magazines, today, where there are not really places that are quote unquote professional critics, anybody with a mic and a camera is a critic, right? And so today, the requirements of giving your opinion publicly are simply purchasing a camera and a mic, or holding your phone up like a lot of people do. They'll hold their phone up right to their face. Hey, yeah, this is what I think. I just walked out of this movie, blah, blah, blah.
Yep.
And
everybody can be Siskel and Ebert.
That's right. And we'll do that here just in a few minutes.
Right. And some would argue that Siskel and Ebert weren't always right, which is why differing opinions are valuable.
Right. And I agree with that. And I think that when it comes to opinions, both the good and the bad can help your movement, your film, your art show, your live dance performance, whatever it is, because people say, oh, that's interesting that this is what such and such thinks. I'm going to go check it out. Whether that's a Picasso, whether that's something at the Philharmonic, or whether that's Benny the Butcher's new single. I think this is the wrong attitude of it shouldn't be critiqued. Anything you put out, people are going to have an opinion because they are consuming it. It's no different than going to a restaurant. I'm sure when Benny the Butcher goes to a restaurant, he has thoughts on the meals that he has consumed. Now, does Benny the Butcher put on a camera and walk out and say, yo, I just left Catch Steak. Shit was all right, but it was undercooked slightly. I don't know because I don't follow him. But even if he did, that wouldn't be wrong. I don't think if that chef put out a meal, if a service was paid for, if something was consumed, people will have opinions. I don't think...
Sorry.
It's fine. I don't think we should be stifling opinions. I think we should be encouraging opinions. Now, I do think the way you express that opinion is important.
Absolutely.
I think your example of Funk Flex was on point. I hate to keep mentioning him, but at one point, Joe Budden was not giving his critiques in the best delivery for artists. There were many clips when he had the show with Ak, Everyday Struggle, where he was saying, oh, this shit is trash. This shit is trash. This shit is trash. Yo, that's trash. And sometimes things are trash, and you're entitled to your opinion, but I do think the way we all deliver our opinions makes a difference. If you get on a public platform and say, yo, that shit fucking sucks. It's the worst painting I've ever seen. I don't know what Picasso was thinking when he did it. Yeah, that's not the nicest way to do it. That can, possibly, we don't know, but it could possibly affect the sales of said item, the numbers of people going to listen to or watch this piece of content, this creation, and yeah, the inside feelings of the person who created it. But I think one of the things you have to learn as an artist, especially in New York Underground, which is where Benny came from, is to have thick skin.
Right.
You will encounter people as an underground artist, and I know this firsthand, who will straight up tell you to your face, yo, that shit was whack. Yo, that's not the shit you should have performed. Yo, why you didn't do this? Yo, why you didn't do that? Nigga, that shouldn't be the single. It should be track 9. All of these things are part of being an artist. And I'm saying Picasso probably didn't have to go through it in the same way. If Benny the Butcher had to go to an open mic every Tuesday and hear that every Tuesday until he got to a certain point and now those opinions changed, yeah, that's much harder than maybe Picasso, who put out the one painting people didn't like, or the 5, whatever it was. He didn't have to hear that every Tuesday. And today, you don't have to hear it today you do have to hear it way more frequently because everyone's got a mic, everyone's got cameras, everyone's got opinions, and so you do. But that's part of the game. If you want to publicly put anything out, this podcast, a piece of art, whatever, if we decide, hey, we're going to do interpretive dance one time and put it out. If we do an interpretive dance piece, guess what? There are people who are going to see it and say, no, this is a terrible interpretive dance piece. I don't even know what they were interpreting. Well, then that's what, that's what people are going to do. I'm not laughing at you because dance people could feel a way about what you're doing. And I don't dance, so I'm not going to laugh. I don't know if you're joking or not, but I'm not laughing. You make money moves? I don't make any moves. Anyway, yeah, I think that's an important thing to.
So you're not gonna dance with me? You're not gonna do the interpretive dance with me?
Nah, I'd be somewhere else when it's happening. Maybe I'd be with Chris behind the camera.
But I don't know. You just said we were gonna do interpretive dance.
It was if.
So
I think it's important that people understand you need to have a sort of thick skin to be part of public anything. If we put out the example of the interpretive dance, people are going to have opinions whether they do dance or do not.
You know people who do interpretive dance?
I do know people who do interpretive dance.
That's why you're worried about my dance I just did?
No, I just think as a person who doesn't dance and a person who does a lot of other stuff, I already have enough criticism that I open myself up to. I don't want to have any more scrutiny than need be. Oh. And perhaps that's really what Benny the Butcher feels. Maybe he feels like, yo, I don't want to hear more opinions than need be. But Benny the Butcher, you're a big artist. I know Benny the Butcher is not Lil Wayne or Jay-Z or Nas or J. Cole or any of the artists we constantly name. But Benny the Butcher has been on the rise for quite some time, and he is becoming a household name.
I feel like interpretive dancers are not watching this podcast.
Yes, because that's the point we're making.
I'm sorry.
All right, I'm out, man. This is good. No, I'm just kidding. I'm not out.
I feel like they're not watching this podcast. You think interpretive dancers are watching this podcast?
We can move on. It's okay.
I'm just asking.
I don't know who watches this podcast.
Okay.
And so I'm just saying, if
I mean, you said you know interpretive dancers, so I just figured,
I do. I don't know if they watch the pod though. But it doesn't matter. This is in the web. Anyone could come across it. We could blow up and become the #1 podcast, and people start going back to our old episodes and be like, what the fuck is this? This shit is trash. And so I don't want to open myself up to dance critiques.
I mean, I did ballet and tap for about a year and a half.
Right. There it is, folks.
And listen, I've been going to weddings my whole life.
Got it.
And I'll be on the dance floor. So I feel like I'm qualified. Since there's a lot of conversation about who's qualified to critique, I feel like I'm qualified to do interpretive dance.
Go for it. Knock yourself out.
Yep. New segment coming soon. Dion interprets the dance.
Not on this platform. You're going to have to create your own show for that.
Hardly Dancing.
There you go. Yep. That's a perfect name. Perfect name.
Oh, hush.
Perfect
anyway.
Name. I'm hardly dancing.
We know.
That's me right there.
We know you're hardly dancing. Anyway.
We can move on.
I agree with everything you said. I think that, I said what I said.
Well, I was agreeing with you, so.
Right. But I said what I said already. We got to get out of that space where, I understand the fears. I truly do. But we got to get out of that space where we're telling people that they can't dislike things publicly. I just don't understand that, and I don't think that it's helpful. Like you said, it's an ecosystem, and it doesn't work if there isn't space for criticism.
Yeah, and it's always existed. Even in public, like in the 90s, which is, I don't know what the aim of Griselda was when they came out or the aim of them today as individuals or as a collective, but a lot of people say they have re-emerged. Mm-hmm. That's the right way to say it?
That's the word, yeah.
They've breathed new life into the boom bap sound, which is a 90s sound. Mm-hmm. In the 90s, The Source was doing 5 mics or less. 5 mics was the perfect score. Everyone aimed for it. That was a public criticism. Mm-hmm. XXL had their rating system. Everybody had stuff like that. It's just that today it's heightened. It's evolved along with the music consumption and the music availability, and I dare say the music industry. But it's always existed.
Yeah.
It's not that it doesn't. And museums too. Like when a new exhibit comes, we did it here. We went and saw a book of Hove at the Brooklyn Public Library. We came here and we critiqued and spoke about the exhibit. It wasn't a song. We didn't go and listen to an album, even though you can listen to music there at the exhibit. We came and critiqued the exhibit itself. And I'm sure people who go to museums and have podcasts, they critique what they see too.
And we also don't come on here and bash people every episode either. You know what I mean? And I think there's a happy medium, as I said before. I think there's a happy medium, or as you said, that there's a happy medium between, being honest and saying things the right way, or saying things a certain way, so that it's
with a level of discretion,
right? So that it's not mean, or it's not rude, or there's a way to share your opinion without completely dismissing the work of another person. I don't think that's helpful. I don't think that's productive. And I don't think that's what we do here. And I don't think that's what a lot of, because these days, yeah, it is a lot of popular podcasts, or, it's a lot of platforms, like digital people that are on digital platforms giving their opinions about music. And I think we need that. I think we, how do you move the needle? How do we move about culture if it's not fluid?
Right.
So,
and listen, sometimes, being as blunt as possible, sometimes shit just doesn't resonate with you. It's okay to say, yo, I just didn't like this thing, whether that's food, whether that's art in an exhibit, like hanging on a wall, whether that's a song, an album, a movie, whatever it is. It's okay to come up and say, yo, I didn't like this. I think it becomes not okay when you personally attack the person who created it. If I came up here and said, hey, such and such artist is a complete piece of shit. Why? How come they can't write a fucking song? That is unnecessary. That is messed up. But if you say, hey, I listened to my favorite artist's new album and I think it sucks, that's okay to say. You can say, and you can even go, some people even do track by track breakdowns. Yeah, track 1, I like this. Track 2, I like that. I just think you should include some of the good, because especially there's usually some good in anything, right? And I think that's the difference. Like, I am very harsh critic of certain people, but I also come up here, like I just did at the start of this conversation about Wayne. I'm not a big Wayne fan. I harshly critique, quote unquote, Lil Wayne often. Same with Drake. But when they do good things, I also say that too. I think part of being an artist is understanding that everyone is not going to like everything. We came up here and spoke about Oppenheimer. Christopher Nolan is one of my favorite directors, but guess what? He also has stuff I don't like. It's okay to come up here and be like, yeah, I don't really know why that war scene was in the movie Tenet. The movie Tenet was already weird enough. Adding that long war scene was unnecessary, and really, it messed up the film. That's okay to do, even with your favorite people.
Now I want to see this movie because I feel like it keeps coming up as like a bad Christopher Nolan film.
Tenet?
Yes.
Christopher Nolan is hard because he's done so many great things, and we have a high expectation of him. It's like all the top artists, right? Same thing with, like, going back to Drake. Drake fans have a really high expectation of Drake. Jay-Z fans have a really high expectation of Jay-Z. And so it's the same thing. Like, if I sat here and did a track by track breakdown of Jay-Z's 444 album, it's not going to be great because I have high expectations of Hove, and that album did not meet them. Right. And so that's what happens with Tenet. Christopher Nolan has a huge following as a director. Mm-hmm. He's done a lot of great things. I believe some of his projects have won Oscars, if I'm correct. Mm-hmm. But Tenet fell under that bar. And so people critique it. And what I'm saying is, that's okay. It's okay for people to come up here and say, go on any platform and say, I don't like this thing.
Yeah.
I think the problem is that people receive that, internalize that, and get upset. If you're going to put out art, you have to be okay with the fact that, one, everyone's not going to like it. And two, even your biggest fans will not love everything you do as an artist, as a podcaster, as an author, as an interviewer. I don't expect any person to love everything I've done in any of those categories. Even some of my biggest music fans, they come to me and say, I like this project, but track 7, it wasn't my favorite one, and here's why. I always say the same thing. I appreciate your criticism and letting me know your thoughts, especially because you're one of my biggest fans, that person. Yeah. But I don't expect you to love every record. Mm-hmm. And sometimes as an artist, you also know, this track is not for everybody. Right. Going all the way back to the beginning of this pod, and then I'll shut up. I'm sure that Meg knows Cobra is not going to be every Meg Thee Stallion fan's favorite record. I'm sure she knows that, because this is not the usual single from Meg Thee Stallion. I'm sure she knew when she put it out, hey, some of my biggest fans are not going to love this record. That doesn't mean it's not a good record. Yeah. It doesn't mean Meg Thee Stallion sucks and shouldn't do music. No, she killed it. Yeah. But that's part of being an artist. I'm done.
Well, that is true. That's very true. You have to be prepared for whatever the reaction is going to be. Yeah. Everyone needs to be prepared, including Lauryn Hill.
I didn't know that's where we was going. Almost spit my water everywhere.